By the way, Miss Kelly's being taken out to dinner, so somebody else is in the running for first in line. We'll do something to find that. After I preach and before we eat, Ashley and Andrew and the youth that were presented your Bibles, certificates, and new members packets, if you'll just stay quickly for a few pictures, that'll help us make some type collage, something in the future where we look back and see what God has done in our church through the people He's placed in particular places. That includes you. You're an important part of what's taking place at East End Baptist Church now and in the future. So be excited about that. If you have your Bibles, turn to the book of Mark. Mark is quickly coming to an end. Next week is a wonderful celebration for us as disciples of Christ, followers of Christ. We've learned a little bit, or a whole lot, I hope, from God's Word in the book of Mark. In particular, we've been introduced to Judas recently, and we just learned what a hypocrite he was. He was so good that no one around him really saw through the mask or his actions. He stole from the disciples with the money, yet no one questioned who would be the one to deceive Christ. They served with him, they went to church with him, they performed miracles with him, he was there with Jesus, yet he wasn't saved. What does that say to us today? There's many, many times that we've been in God's house. There's many times we've been, dare I say, we've been to Bible school. We've raised our hand at Bible school. I'm always real hesitant. I just don't want someone to just raise their hand and assume for all of their life that they've given their heart and soul to Jesus. It's a real strong commitment that we must have. In particular, in the book of Mark, we see where Jesus is in the garden. Remember talking about pressure. We talked about life. We talked about the pressure that Jesus went through. And then in particular, we're going to look at that night, and you'll see it on the screen, but I'm in Mark chapter 14. And I'm picking up in verse 41. I'm in Mark chapter 14. And I'm in verse 41. And remember, Jesus is praying, right? Every time he prays, he comes back and they've fallen asleep. Now, I want you to be honest with yourself. We've asked this probably a million times, so this will be 1,000,001. Have you ever started a prayer but didn't finish? Can I get an amen? Amen. And you'll wake up, some of you wake up in the middle of the night and try to finish it, or you'll remember that prayer 3 days later trying to finish it. And this is what's taking place here. Jesus goes away and he must be praying whatever length of time, and then the disciples, those that were with him in particular, couldn't keep their eyes open. I remember being a child, no joking, I had trouble getting to sleep. And I remember being young, and I would pray to God, and here's what I would pray. Lord, I wish you'd send that preacher from that church over here. I'd go to sleep in a second. I did pray that, because every time I was in church, I'd go to sleep. And it was like that preacher was a Benadryl. Now, I know I had that effect on many of you. And although I may have that effect on you, God's Word should energize you and wake you to service to Him. So yeah, that's true story. I did pray that. Preacher's not important, right? Could have been me that was preaching. But in particular, I just thought, man, if you just got him here, I would go to sleep. And sometimes it's very difficult. I found myself, I don't know about you, it's like I could be awake till I'm in the Lord's house, and it's like something happens and it makes me sleepy. It's not the pews, I can tell you that. I've been there, done that. It's not where you're seated, because they're not the most comfortable. These are probably more than others. I don't know. I believe Satan comes close to you and tries to steal from you God's Word. Here's something about that night that I found really powerful. I made the statement here. I encourage you to write it down. That night exposes us to His will. That night exposes us to His will. I'm going to quickly read 41 through 52 just so you see in its entirety what takes place. Then we're going to go back and really kind of look at that. Maybe not verses specifically. We're not really going to break down words today in particular, maybe a few. But I want you to hear it as a whole, and I want you to see what takes place. Mark chapter 14, beginning in verse 41. I'm reading now the King James. Find something that you're comfortable with. And he cometh the third time, and he saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. Third time. It is enough. The hour has come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Notice what takes place. He says, rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. Everything's beginning to escalate, right? We're here in the passage. We're talking about that night. He comes back. He says, you just go ahead and rest. And he says, no, let's get on our feet because the hour is at hand. It is about to take place. Rise up, let's go. He that betrayeth me is at hand. Notice what takes place in verse 43. And immediately while he spake, here comes one particular person that he knew all about, everything about him, even to the point where the disciples didn't. He's really a phenomenal hypocrite at hiding who he really is, but pretending to be something else to the people he cares most about. Have you ever met someone like that? Amen. Have you ever been that? Amen. Judas, a portion of our life, becoming who he is. He says, rise up. And he spoke, and here comes Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude. And they sent so many people, and we're arresting the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the one who rode on a donkey, which is a sign of peace, the one who taught God's word, but never kind of overthrew the government, right? That's what a lot of people wanted, Jesus to come overthrow the government and to start war. And here he is, very peaceful, and they bring with them, notice this here, he's being betrayed into the hands of sinners. He says, rise, let's go. And immediately, here comes Judas, one of the 12, and with him was a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, here's what I'll do. Whosoever I shall kiss, verse 44, that same is he. The person that I kiss is the person you are to arrest. Take him and lead him away safely. You ever notice like sometimes in life you want to do something wrong, but you don't want anything bad to come of it? You ever notice like you want to accomplish things, but you don't want anybody to be really hurt by it? Notice what he said. He said, I want you to take him safely. And as soon as he was come, he goeth straight forward to him and saith, Master, Master. And notice the word in the King James is kissed. Circle, underline that. It's important that we come back to it. And they laid their hands on him and they took him. And one of them that stood by drew a sword, smote a servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear. And Jesus answered and said unto them, are you come out as against a thief with swords to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and you didn't take me. But the scripture must be fulfilled. Notice what took place in verses 50, 51, and 52. And they all forsook him and fled. Every disciple that's there, everybody that's a follower, everything that's taken place. This is not a peaceful encounter. And when they took Jesus, they began to grab him and take him. Everybody around him, everybody in his life began to leave or go away. And there followed him a certain young man. And I like verse 51 because there's not a name. Because there will be people who are followers of Christ or say they're followers. But when the kitchen gets hot, you'll find they're not available. It could be many, many reasons, whether it's saved or unsaved, or whether it's committed or uncommitted. But notice what took place in 51, and everybody could place themselves here. And there followed a certain young man having a linen cloth cast about his naked body, and the young man laid hold on him. And when he grabbed hold of him, he just ran out of everything and kept going. He ran completely out of his clothes. But it was so dramatic, it was so forceful, everything's taking place so quickly, this young man just took off running. And he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. There'll be many people in the kingdom of God when persecution strikes that will find themselves leaving instead of standing firm. But here's something about that night. That night exposes us to his will. When Jesus finishes praying to his Father, Jesus announces to his men, you've seen it in the passage, that his time has come, the betrayal has arrived, or the one who's betraying him. And even though Jesus told them who he was, Judas still came and kissed him on the cheek. And Judas still showed up to follow through with what he said he would do. And he came to him and he kissed him on the cheek. And I want you to notice what takes place. And in the King James, it's really neat because it doesn't say kiss and it doesn't say kissing. It just says kiss, which is past tense, or it's even a word that we can describe or look up. Kissing really was a sign of respect and affection. And when Judas got there, here's the greatest hypocrite, and he wants to show the world here. He wants to show Jesus, or at least prove something to him. I love and admire you. This is the way I am. And here's what he's really saying to Jesus. I don't know what's taking place, but I'm here to love you. Really in his heart, he's done something different. There'll be many people in the church who don't go to heaven. We're really close to Jesus, but we've never been saved. We've heard all about them. We've been to our Bible schools. We've been to our Sunday schools, but we've never been saved. We're really close to Jesus. We say all the right things. We sing all the right things. We know all the words. We're willing to kiss them on the cheek, but we're really not a follower. This is really important for us to understand and examine ourselves, and we should do that from time to time, and it's a wonderful time in our life to do this. But notice what the Bible says. This is a sign of respect and affection. And when Judas kissed the Lord, King James Version, it wasn't just a peck on the cheek. Here's what he kept doing. The word kiss refers to a series of kisses. And what Judas did was he kept on kissing the Lord. And here's what he did. He's just reaffirming to himself, I love you, I love you, I love you. I want you to know that I'm on your side. You ever seen people in your life who overdo something to convince you there's something they're not? And you kind of see through that. Like you're trying to be something you're not, and you're overdoing it. You ever been there? Somebody say amen? I'm kind of seeing that. I'm kind of hesitant on what you're doing. Why are you acting this way when I really know you're that way? Judas is doing this. I don't know if it's to confirm to himself or trying to convince Jesus. But here's the thing, and you need to know in your life spiritually for all of eternity, you can't convince Jesus you're a follower. Either you are or you aren't. You're not going to get to the throne. You're not going to get to the judgment and try to convince him of everything you've done right to be allowed into heaven or to be a follower of his. Your decision comes now. It's a series of kisses. He kept on kissing the Lord. As a matter of fact, all to the point where the guards came and took Jesus captive and led him away. Judas's kiss was a show of loyalty, but he was very distant in reality. He's trying to show everybody around him who they want him to be. This is who I am. I'm a follower of Jesus, but really in his heart, he's distant in reality. The deeds Judas committed that night serve as a warning of the dangers of hypocrisy. And I want to encourage you today and warn you today. Judas was as close to Jesus as any man who's ever walked the face of the earth. He heard the gospel from the lips of the author and the finisher of the faith. He witnessed love and grace in every action, every day. He saw the power of God like only a handful of others have ever seen it in eternity. Yet he walked away unsaved from the gospel of Jesus Christ. And today, he's sentenced to a life in eternity of hell. Close to the King, yet so far away. Many here today are in the same position. You've heard the truth, you've seen the truth, and even Judas acknowledged the truth. Remember in the book of Matthew, he said, I have turned in an innocent man. I've done something to an innocent person. Yet Judas died and went to hell because he failed to believe the truth. Judas literally kissed the gates of heaven, and he died and went to hell. When you reach the end of your life today, all the years of your existence, everything will be condensed into one question. And here's the question for you today. What did you do with Jesus? Nothing else will be important. Nothing else will matter. Nothing else will be considered. Jesus and your relationship with him will determine whether you live forever in heaven or whether you suffer forever in hell. And that night that we're reading in the book of Mark exposes us to the will of the Father in these particular areas. That night exposes us to the courage with his will. I want you to see what takes place. One of the things that stands out is the courage of Jesus Christ above anything else or anyone else. If you get into the book of John, Jesus is the one who goes out to meet the soldiers when they arrive. He is courageous in the face of death. He confronts them about their mission. He identifies himself to them. He didn't play dumb, and he didn't act like it was someone else. This is Jesus who's about to give his life, and he does not resist them according to the book of Mark chapter 14, verse 46. No resistance when they take him into captivity. Peaceful as a sacrificial lamb. He knows everything he's about to face. He knows every detail of what lies ahead. He understands that his men will forsake him. He knows that they'll run. He knows that they'll flee. He knows the nation of Israel will reject him. He knows about the violence that he is about to suffer. He knows they will beat him and mock him and spit on him and beat him with a cat of nine tails. He knows what's about to take place. He knows they'll crucify him between two thieves. He knows all these things, yet he faces it with courage. What an example for those of us today who live. Why did he do it? Because he's committed to the will of his Father. Why did he do it? Because he loves you. That's why Jesus did it. He did it because He's the only hope we had for salvation. Jesus came into the world for this very moment. And He does not try to get out of it. His demeanor is one of absolute courage and absolute strength. That night exposes us to the will of the Father. It exposes us to the courage of His will. It exposes us to the compromises against His will. When Jesus is arrested, every single disciple, according to Mark chapter 14, particularly in verse 50, every single disciple ran away. There'll be moments in our life where you're going to want to compromise your devotion to Jesus Christ. It could be the death of a loved one. It could be a broken relationship. It could be our finances. It could be being hurt in church, drugs and alcohol. We could go down the list of everything that keeps you from a loving relationship with the King of Kings. And you will want to compromise at many points in your life. May I encourage you today to be a person of courage. Even in the midst of fear. Even to the point, aren't you glad? Like, this is not the way I want to make the Bible. Like, I don't want to be the named man that runs away naked, right? That's not how you want to make the Bible. Well, Chad's here, and then Chad ran away. No, so it's really neat they made it unnamed, right? But it fits so many areas of our life for so many of us that are willing to give up everything we have in the proximity of Jesus to get away from the heat of the moment. Many people will do that. Very few will remain. That night exposes us to the compromise against His will. According to Mark 14, verse 31, they never thought this would happen anyway. You ever in life you just think, man, this will never happen. There's no way this will happen. And when it happens, you're shocked and you don't know how to respond. Like, I'm probably an over-planner, overthinker. Like, I kind of even pattern, like, what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, how you're going to say it. And I have responses for multiple conversations. Because I expect it. And when I say this, they're going to say that. Here's how I'm going to respond. But if they come back this way, I'm coming that way. Well, if I come this way, I'm going to angle this way. And then we're going to meet right down here, and that conversation is going to end right there. Does anybody do that? Do you ever plan your conversations? Sometimes it's a good thing to do. It might keep you out of a little bit of trouble. Instead of being spontaneous to the moment. Here's what I used to tell our youth. I really mean this, and I'm really encouraged by it. You make decisions before you're in the moment, or the moment will decide for you. Somebody say amen? You make decisions of what you'll do before it happens, or when it happens, it'll decide what you'll do. Do you know that works with adults? If you will make decisions before it takes place, you will find that you're more apt to follow through with those decisions than allowing the heat of the moment to decide for you. What's taking place in chapter 14 is the disciples they did not believe this would happen. And the moment that it happened is the moment that the heat decided for them and they got out. It happens to the church. It happens to believers. That night exposes us to the compromises against His will. Yet when Jesus was arrested and when He did not resist arrest, the disciples were shaken to the very core of their belief. This is our leader, and He didn't even resist, and they ran away. The word forsook means to abandon someone or to leave them behind. The word fled means to seek safety, by flight, to vanish. These men literally ran away and vanished into the night. To conform or be in the presence of the world. They were convinced they would stand with Jesus. But when the hour of testing came, they melted away into the shadows and they left Jesus alone with His enemies. Columbine High School, Cassie Bernal underneath the table. And one gunman came to her and said, "Do you believe?" And she said, "Yes." And he took her life. What would you do? Soviet Union. In the days of the old Soviet Union, soldiers entered a meeting place where Christians are meeting in secret, worshiping the Lord. The soldiers enter and yelled, "If you're an unbeliever, leave now, but if you're a believer, line up against the wall." Most of the crowd leaves. Only a few faithful remain to the point of death. What would you do? In the winter of 320 AD, the emperor in particular at the time had made an agreement that he would not persecute Christians, but he went back on that agreement and he decided, I must persecute them. So he sent it down through the order and through the ranks. The Roman soldiers were experiencing this great revival, and they were accepting Jesus, and there was a group of them, in particular about 40 of them, and their one who was in charge came to them and said, you must not follow Jesus anymore. This must end, and I'll give you till the morning to make your decision. The morning came, those 40 men, he said, which ones are followers of Jesus? And the story says that all 40 of them stepped forward and said, we will live for him till we die. He says, you don't want to do that. I'm going to give you an opportunity. But none of those 40 would reject Jesus Christ. The story goes on to say, for punishment and torture, they made every single one of them strip naked and walk out on a frozen lake to die there in the middle of the lake. They said, if you'll just reject them, you'll come back here to warmth and comfort and food. All through the night they shivered. Some died frozen to the lake. One guy out of the 40 walked back to the comfort of the heat. The entire time, here's what they chanted. From the moment they were asked to the moment that it was over. O Lord, 40 wrestlers have come forth to fight for thee. Grant that 40 wrestlers or soldiers may gain the victory. And all through the night they said they could hear them chanting out on the lake. All night long, Lord, just grant that all 40 of us will see victory through you. Yet one came back to the warmth. It said when that soldier got back, the one guy who was in charge, who sent him naked out on the lake, took off everything he had. And he began to chant, 40 wrestlers, Lord. 40 soldiers. And he marched out in the middle of that lake and died with them that night. It's the power of the gospel that changes lives. It's the power of men and women of conviction that sees others saved from a devil's hell. What would you have done? That night exposes us not only to those things, but to the compassion of his will. You know, Jesus, even in the midst of being arrested and mocked and spit upon, all the things that he knew about, Jesus was a man of compassion. Let me show you in these areas. Jesus demonstrated compassion to Judas Iscariot. Judas was a traitor. He's a hypocrite. Judas sold Jesus for the price of a slave. Judas led a mob to arrest Jesus. Judas came to Jesus and betrayed him with a kiss. And when Judas did this, he didn't even respond in anger. According to the book of Matthew, Jesus said to him, friend, why did you come? He looked in the eyes of the man who was betraying him to his death, and he called him friend. Words that are referred to people or comrades or partners. It's an expression of love and goodwill. Jesus knows what Judas is doing. He knows that Judas has rejected the Lord and the gospel. He knows he's a lying hypocrite. He knows that he's headed to hell. Yet he reaches out to Judas one more time. It's the same that he does for you today. He reaches out to you one more time. Every time you hear a sermon, he's reaching out to you. Every time you rub shoulders with a Christian, he's reaching out to you. Every time you draw a breath, God is reaching out to you. He does it because he loves you. And he doesn't want you to go to hell. He does it so you'll be saved. He demonstrated compassion. The Lord also demonstrated compassion to a man named Malchus, and you can look it up, it's really neat. He's the guy that when Peter responded, he's the guy that got his ear cut off. Yet Jesus, with his enemy, even responded with compassion. Remember what he did? He reached down. Can you imagine this moment? Now, this is a book. This is a sermon. This is a passage. Peter comes to his defense. You can get in the other Gospels. He cuts the guy's ear off. He's ready to fight and die for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And Jesus, in peace, begins to pick up the ear and put it back on him. Now, I don't know what happened to Malchus. I don't know if he was saved or not. But I'm telling you, he could have been as close to Jesus and seen the miracles and still died and went to hell. Jesus is a man of compassion. Malchus was close enough to see his face and to hear his voice and to feel his touch and to experience his love and compassion. He was as close to Jesus as anyone could be. Yet he was lost. We don't know if he was saved. There are people like that in this room today. You've heard the gospel. You've been in the presence of the Lord. Perhaps you've even heard His voice and felt His touch. And what a tragedy it would be for you to die without ever truly knowing Him. He also demonstrated compassion toward Peter. When Peter cut off the ear of Malchus, Peter was acting in the flesh. Would you agree with that? Jesus intervened because Peter would have died that night. But Jesus knew that He must intervene and put the ear back on to spare Peter's life. He's a man of compassion. Do you know what would have happened to the church if all the disciples would have died that night? The story would be much different throughout history. By one fleshly motivated act, Peter nearly destroyed the church. Do you know what happens when the church acts in the flesh? Can I talk to the church for a moment? Do you know what happens when the church acts in the flesh? When we don't get our way, see things our way, move our way, paint our way, color our way, sing our way, dance our way, whatever we're doing our way, when flesh gets in the way, you're stopping the progress of the kingdom of God. That's a dangerous place to be. But Jesus will show compassion to the church. Peter nearly destroyed the church. There's many churches that have been destroyed by acts of flesh. Jesus demonstrated compassion because Peter was spared along with the rest of the disciples. They were spared and available to give voice to the gospel message. Because they were spared, the gospel came to us one day. Because they were spared, I'm able to preach to you today. It's the power of His will. It's the power of that night. It's the power of the exposure of all the things that we've seen. It's the power of the King and how He's able to save your soul. That night exposes us to His will. Every head bowed, eyes closed.